4 universal vocal mixing tips. Hiya, it's me again, Joe Novelli. I'm a singer, arranger and producer for the Sons of Pictures a cappella group. I run lots of choirs in the West Midlands and I work here at Grosvenor Road Studios in Birmingham. So here at GRS, we have the biggest live room in Birmingham, perfect for larger choirs and ensembles. We have an SSL AWS 900 Plus desk. We have loads of vintage microphones, including U87s, and we record and mix all kinds of music, from dance to choirs and everything you can think of. Before we get started, make sure you like this video and subscribe for more music tips. So this is the last video in my series of videos. What we've looked at so far is the things you need to record audio, how to get the best vocal performance, things that can go wrong and mistakes that can be made when recording, and what to do before mixing. So today, we are going to look at some things I do every time I start to produce and mix vocals. So a lot of people will give you their vocal chains or tell you what to do exactly, whereas I think that every vocal needs to be treated differently because they've been recording in a different place, different people have different voices, different rooms sound different, but there are things that I will do every time and I'm going to share those with you today. Let's get started. So I've got loaded up my Logic projects that we looked at in the last video. Just me with a little demo track, very short, something simple, but we can use this to show you these principles that I do every time I mix. So the first thing I do, number one, is to put some EQ on the vocal. So we go here in Logic, click on the audio effects box here, and I just open up the channel EQ. So we could talk about going into EQing vocals, but again, it's very different depending on what room you're in, how your voice sounds, what mic you've used. But what I do every time with any vocal, put this high pass filter on, okay? So if you click here, basically what that's doing is it's rolling off this bottom end of EQ. So the human voice doesn't really have any important information in this lower region. So I would automatically cut off probably about 80 Hertz to start off with. A lot of mics nowadays have a roll off on them where they actually automatically cut off 80 Hertz for vocals when you record in. But I like to do it on Logic. So I'll start here and you'll see when I play the song. When you need me, I will comfort you. So if you're looking at this kind of frequency spectrum down here, this is kind of the equalizer saying this is what your voice is sounding like. This is the build-up of frequencies. And you'll notice that really for my voice, I've got quite a high sounding voice. It's not really doing anything below this 150. Let's watch again. When you need me, I will comfort you. So yeah, kind of here 150, 140. There's no information happening in this range at all. There's the occasional bump here, but because it's so much lower, it's probably just the noise I don't want. So what I'd do is I'd move this up from 80, probably to about there. That seemed to be where things were happening. So I've got there at 120. Let's just have a listen again. Now I just want to make sure that that's not affecting the quality of my voice by taking out low frequencies that I want to keep in. When you need me, I will comfort you. Great, so to me, it's looking good. I'm not kind of digging into this frequency range at all. And also, it's sounding good. It's not sounding like I've taken anything out that I didn't want to take. And why we do this is because there's a lot of noise, room noise, and just general kind of hum down here that we just don't need. And also, if you have any problems with plosives, so you know how we said the pop filter stops those popping noises, if you're getting any of that, a lot of that information will be down in this range. So doing this will help to get rid of that as well. And the aim here is to get rid of the frequencies we don't need. And what this means is that when we come to master or come to limit later, we'll actually be able to get our vocal sounding louder because it actually has less audio information in it. So that's why we want to get rid of all that. When we make it loud, it will make it nice, loud and upfront and louder than if we didn't do this. The next thing I would do with almost all vocals, it's not always the case, but generally, especially for a lead vocal, is to put some compression on. So personally, I really like the Waves RVox, which is a compressor you can buy from Waves, but you can use any compressor in your DAW that you've got, but I'm going to show you RVox. So we'll open up the compressor here. What a compressor is doing is it's basically taking the dynamic range of the vocal, so the highest, loudest bits and the softest, quietest bits, and when you're applying the compression, it's bringing those closer together, so it's making it a more consistent sounding vocal with less dynamics. You don't want it to feel like there's less dynamics, but there is physically less dynamics. And again, because it means things are getting quieter or closer together, when we're actually making it loud at the end, it will seem like it's going to be louder than if we didn't have compression. All I do here, I probably start with not very much compression. It depends what genre you're doing, but generally, you know, I only maybe want to kind of roll off maybe 3 dB or something of the loudest bits. So I'll play it through. When you need me, I will comfort you. So here, all we're doing is, in a compressor, you'd be turning down the threshold. So I'm bringing this down, and as you'll see now, if I take this down, when I play the vocal again, you'll see it's reducing some of the volume here by this amount of dB. So let's just have a look. When you need me, I will comfort you. There's a little red line here, and that's showing how much compression is happening. When you need me, I will comfort you. So there how I have it, it's hitting around kind of -3 on average, which is pretty good. I think that's a good starting point. But what we're actually listening for is, in this vocal, you can see that, for example, this bit, I will comfort you. So you can see and hear that this comfort, the start of comfort, is quite a lot quieter than the beginning and end here. So actually what I want to do in this compression is make these more similar volume. So let's just have a listen without the compression on. I will comfort you. And then with the compression on. I will comfort you. So relatively, it's quite hard to hear, but relatively the start of that comfort is a bit louder compared to without it. But what you'll also notice is that the volume in total has gone up, but we'll remedy that in step 4. So I'll come back to that. So I've reached about my -3 gain reduction, which is kind of what I was hoping for as a starting point. For sake of argument, let's put the compressor on really heavy. So I'll bring this right down. When you need me, I will comfort you. So you can hear it's now much louder. So just to compensate for that, I know I said we'd come back to this, but what I will do just for now is just bring this gain down. I will comfort you. Probably about -10. I will comfort you. So now, just to show you what the compression is doing visually, I'm going to print this, and I do that by going File, Bounce, Track in Place, and that will print it with the plugin on. So there we go. Now you can really see what that compression's done. So this was the track before compression. This one is once I put that compression on, and what the compression has done is brought these highs and these lows to a much more similar volume, and that's where you get that consistency. So hopefully it will still sound a little bit dynamic. I will comfort you. So you've still got that swell in the thirds, still getting that, but it's actually a lot closer in volume between all the different parts of the vocal. And what this means is that it's going to really stick through. If you put music in the background, you're going to hear that comfort come through rather than die behind the music. And it's going to be really easy to get nice and loud. When you turn it up, the loudest parts aren't going to limit how loud you can turn up the quietest parts because they're nice and similar in volume already. So, number 3 is all about putting effects on bus tracks. So, we've got our vocal channel here. We've done the EQ, got rid of all that low end. We've done the compression, happy with how it's sounding now. So the next thing we might want to do is add a reverb or delay. Now, I like to do this on a bus track rather than directly on the channel. So how we set that up is we click on the sends here, and then I'll go down to bus and just bus 1 here. And this gives us a bus channel here. Rename that to know what it is. So this is going to be our reverb. So to send the signal to the bus, all we have to do is click on this circle here with option held down, and now it will send it at 0 dB to that bus. So what we have now is we've set up the vocal channel, which is what we've already got processed, and an exact copy of that. Okay, that's what we've got. The bus is an exact copy of that. What we want to do is turn this bus into just a reverbed version. So all I do is click here, add on my reverb to that bus, okay? Because we want this bus to just be reverb only and not have any of the original vocal signal, make sure the dry is muted and the wet is up in volume, okay? What that means is that only the effect will be happening on this channel. Some plugins, you might have a knob that is 0 to 100% dry wet. Make sure if we're doing this method with reverbs on buses, put it to 100% wet, okay? When we listen to the separate channels now, we'll have our original channel. When you need me, I will comfort you. So that has no reverb on. And then if we just listen to the bus, it will be just reverb. When you need me, I will comfort you. So now we've got the original vocal channel and just a reverb vocal channel. And what this means is we have more control about blending this reverb in. So what I would do now in practice is I would take this all the way down to 0 so it's off. So now we've got just the normal vocal channel with volume, the reverb is muted. And what I do is I would just loop this and play it over and over again and blend in that reverb. So slowly bring the reverb channel up until I'm happy where it sits. So let's have a listen. So very dry, and I start slowly bringing this up. Comfort you when you need me. So now you're starting to hear the reverb. So now it's really reverby. Maybe back it off a bit. I will comfort you when you need me. So let's say I'm happy about there. I've got a nice blend, a little bit of reverb, but that main vocal is still cutting through. So that's what I would do with my reverbs and delays. And the other benefit to this is if you haven't got a really powerful computer, this will save on a lot of CPU and hopefully stop your projects overloading and cutting out. Because what you can do, say I had 6 vocals or 6 tracks, instrument tracks, if I was putting a separate reverb on each one of those, that's more processing power on the computer and it will soon add up and your computer will overload. So by adding it on a bus, what you can do, like we've done with this channel, is send each individual channel to that same reverb. So rather than having 6 separate reverbs, you've just got 1 reverb, so it's saving the computer a lot of work and it will mean your projects are working more smoothly and hopefully won't crash. So number 4, the last thing to do is to make sure you are gain matching after using plugins. So what I mean by this is, as you saw with the compression earlier, when I was bringing down that compression, it was making everything louder. The problem with this is if we go back to the last video we did and talk about gain staging, you soon end up with more volume in your tracks, which means you could start overloading your master, which is going to cause distortion. So I'll go back to this compressor. Let's turn it right down, just to show you again what this looks like. When you need me. So I've got about maybe -3 dB coming off the vocal, which is where I want it for this. Remember, we started turning down the gain here. So when you first get the plugin, the gain's going to be on 0. It's going to sound like this. When you need me. And if I turn it off, a lot quieter, okay? So this is where you can come into problems. If you're just taking the compression on, then you're going to start getting louder and louder and louder in that channel. So what I do is I play it through and I check where I'm sitting on the vocal here. So about -16. Oh, a bit louder. Average, I would say around the -15 mark. So all I'm going to do is put that compression back on and see now where I'm averaging on here. So let's put the compression back. So you can already see it's already up by the 6. So we're probably aiming about -6, -7 there. So before hitting about -15, now with the compression I'm hitting -6 or 7. So what I need to do to stop that master channel overloading is bring this gain back down by, let's say 7 to 15, so by 8. So I just put -8 gain, and then now when we watch, we're back around -15. And what this means is that you're not going to start overloading these channels and masters, and it's really important to do this after any plugin. Some plugins like this have it conveniently on the plugin. If it didn't have this, what I could do is take the gain back to 0 and just put my own gain plugin here and take it back down to -8. But I try and do this with all my channels. So once I've done that gain staging at the start, until I'm starting to move the faders because I want a bit more vocal or a bit less vocal, I'm going to try and make all my plugins on that channel stay at the same volume by doing this gain staging again. And that's super important not to overload that master. So that's it. They are my 4 things that I do on almost every vocal and keep an eye on to make sure everything is in a good place when I go forward and keep mixing. So I know there's lots more things you can do to vocals, including saturation, de-essing, limiting, etc. But these things, they all depend on the vocal itself. So you really need to use your ears to work out what you need to use, whether you want to use this, whether it needs a bit of this and a bit of that. But the things I've taught you today are things that I would say 95% of vocal tracks benefit from having, and that's a really good place to start. So that's it. That's the end of my vocal recording series. I hope you've enjoyed it and learnt some really good tips to help you get the best vocal recordings you can. So go back and watch all the other videos, and please do leave a comment if you really liked it or if you would have done something differently yourself. Make sure you check out all the other videos on the Aux YouTube channel for more music tips. If you're looking for a better way to share your music and get feedback from other collaborators, head over to aux.app and download the desktop app. You can follow me at Joe Novelli Music, and you can follow the studio at Grosvenor Road Studios, and go listen to my group, the Sons of Pictures, at the SO Pictures. Make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell, and thank you for watching. See ya!